guys, this is AJ here. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking to you guys about podcast advertising, how to do it, and why it's important for your show. If you have not already sent us in a voice message or left a comment and feedback in our Q&A on Spotify, please be sure to do so, as feedback and ratings helps us out a lot. Anyway, let's get started with today's episode. Podcast advertising is an essential part of a podcast. You need to know how to advertise, but most importantly, where to advertise. For starters, well, you don't need like a $200 or even $1,000 salary to get your podcast out there and advertise the show. In fact, most podcasts actually start their advertising on social media pages, like Facebook, or through TikTok or Instagram Reels, or even Twitter, for example. So some podcasts even use other social sites like Vimeo, YouTube, and Discord to actually get their followers and people that are already associated with them to check out their show as soon as they get started. Now, podcast advertising is something that a lot of people can sometimes either take for granted or take seriously. You really don't want to take it for granted because making a good first impression on your show is critical. And if you don't make a good impression, it's not like a job interview where you don't get a second chance at that for a very long time. In fact, many podcasters make their mistakes in their first couple episodes, and then they improve as they get along the way. For example, when I started my podcast, I started with an episode that you needed a video to watch, but I didn't necessarily have video on my podcast because video podcast wasn't there at the time. When I advertised my podcast, I was advertising it as if it was a video, and that turned out to be a mistake. Later down the line, when they added video podcasts, I advertised my video podcast with the video because they were now on Spotify, and people actually liked the episode. So the advertising component really and your episode component goes hand in hand. Now, to know where to advertise. This is really important because some places allow advertising, but you also have to be mindful and vigilant of places that don't allow advertising. For example, if you have any Facebook groups or whatnot, read the rules before you actually post into those Facebook groups, as those Facebook groups actually have rules that govern those specific types of channels, and some don't actually allow advertising. For example, company sites, tech support groups, that sort of thing. And even if you're on Discord, there are some areas where you can advertise and some areas where you can't. So please be sure to read the rules. The other thing with knowing where to advertise is where your audience is. Twitter is usually the most common because you can reach just about anyone, anywhere, at any time, without having to be on their friends list or on their follow list. To advertise on Twitter, some tips that can help you are using hashtags next to associated words. This will actually put your topic and your tweet in with the most viral and trending topics. You can also include like regular videos or pictures, as sometimes the algorithm might pick them up. And I noticed that a few days ago when I actually posted mine in there, my video got more views and more analytics data impressions, from the video that I put up there. It carried it up the algorithm, as opposed to some of my other tweets that didn't have a video were kind of low down the list. So in essence, maybe having those tips and tricks can actually help you, but in some cases you don't really need those. And if you want to increase your follower base, don't just tweet out a bunch of ads 24/7. You need to tweet out stuff that actually might be impactful, that's meaningful. Maybe you have like some photos of like a trip or something that you took that you want to share. Try and balance it out. Now, the other common platform is Facebook. Facebook advertising is a little bit different because they require a follower system and a base of followers to actually get your content in some cases. Now, not in all cases. In some cases, they do like hashtags with Twitter and whatnot, but their algorithm I guess it doesn't carry it downstream as far as it would on Twitter. I mean, it's like half. I guess it would carry it half the distance. So when you're doing Facebook, it's a good idea to have a base following in that particular moment to get you started off the ground. And then, Facebook, if you have one set of friends, then friends of friends who are connected to those friends can find you like a backlog channels basically. And so when you have a friend group that's a base, when they reach out to people and they network with people, that second group of people and that third group of people that's expanded the pyramid beyond them, it's now an upside down triangle, as my analogy should say. And the people that are in the bottom part of the triangle that's upside down, they will begin to funnel inward back towards you if they get that far down the chain. And that's what you want. You want to build that base. Once you've built that base, then, try and convince them to listen to your show. And if you can find podcast communities that are like-minded podcasters or listeners that can actually help you or listen to your show and give you some feedback or reviews, then by all means do so. The other tip and trick to podcast advertising is going to happen to be the ratings. Ratings are not 100% critical for your first couple episodes, and usually you won't get those anyway. But as you get more episodes and as you grow in your plays and downloads, you're going to need those ratings. The reason why is because ratings on podcast apps, believe it or not, is one of the main reasons that people listen. You can have a 5-star rating, but if there are not enough ratings, like there's only 5 people who rated your show, then it won't be as impactful as having a 4.4-star rating and like 120 people who actually listen to or watch your show on those platforms. Having the ratings is critical to podcast advertising because it gives people like feedback from other listeners who actually did listen. Even if it's not in the form of words and it's in the form of stars, it gives them that imagery that, this might be worth looking into, and then that gets you the clicks, and the clicks turn into plays. And if they like the show long enough and they download it, that turns into downloads. And usually your hosting platform will tell you this, how to get ratings and what the stats mean and that sort of thing. The last part of advertising I'm going to touch on is the marketing and TikTok and YouTube Reels and the Instagram photos. And the reason why these are important is because these are actually video avenues. And with videos, it's easier to convey yourself to an audience with a video when you have a visual of what you'll be talking about, a visual of yourself maybe, or a visual of what you and your teammates on your podcast, if you have any, were discussing. This can actually be beneficial. Also, making video podcasts can also be useful here. And this is probably the best way to expand your audience as well because it gives you more mediums. And more mediums means more people that might not be listening to your show on the podcast platforms. But if they subscribe to your show on YouTube and they actually do click on your videos, they see you have a podcast, that can generate some extra plays. And also TikTok and Instagram are really key to podcast advertising because when you post, especially on TikTok, when you post on those social media platform sites, those actually carry a long way too. And I think some cases they actually carry farther than Twitter because people get them recommended in their feed based upon what they have already watched, especially on TikTok. And if they've watched more podcast stuff on TikTok, they're going to get more podcast stuff, and then your chances of getting recommended to somebody is extremely high on TikTok. So I would highly recommend that. And if you guys are new and you guys are just starting out, I really recommend reading the blog and everything that I'm going to post in the description and everything associated with it to get a feel. And it doesn't just apply to Anchor podcasters, it applies to everyone too. But I encourage you guys to read it because it will help you guys understand your show and understand things better. Anyways, God, when I talk today. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I am HJ, and I'll see you guys, or hear you guys in this case, in another video.